Chris Boyd, thanks very much for coming on and doing this, mate. Really appreciate it. Great to see you, and I'm looking forward to this. We'll just get into it. If it's good with you, Chris, introductions, your name, your current occupation, and what area geographically does your company operate?
So good to be on here, Adam. Thanks for inviting me on, and good to catch up after a long while. So as you know, my name's Chris Boyd, and my current role is Director of Results and Organisational Performance at a company called Trademark East Africa. And the clue is in the name. So we cover geographically Eastern and now Southern Africa. So we now cover 11 countries in total across Eastern and Southern Africa. So quite a spread on the continent.
Very interesting. I'm sure there's lots to get into there. So what does your company do in depth? What is your company and what does it do?
Right. Okay. So basically what we are, we're a not-for-profit organisation, and we're funded mainly by international governments, international donors. So we have 10 different funders, 10 different investors, mainly European and North American governments through their aid programs, okay? And what we're focused on is what we're getting, our vision really is sustainable, inclusive prosperity. So what we're known as an aid for trade program. So what we do is we do a load of different projects and interventions which are designed to improve trade on the continent of Africa, particularly Eastern and Southern Africa. So for people who don't know a lot about trade is a highly technical area. And I suppose people in the UK and maybe your viewers of this will know a lot about Brexit, right? And maybe not understand what's going on. But trade is governed by a lot of rules and regulations. But some of these rules and regulations can really slow down trade and create a lot of what we call friction in the system, making it more expensive and time-consuming to trade with nations than it has to be. So what we do is we try and remove the friction from the trade system by working at the ports of Mombasa and Dar es Salaam, which are the big East African ports, by bringing in new trade systems, IT systems that can help make it easier for people to do trade, by working with different companies, by working in trade policy. So really, as I say, I won't get into it, it's a highly technical area, trade, but it's really about reducing the time and cost of trade in East Africa, because if you do that, then the theory is that then that translates into greater levels of trade, greater levels of wealth, and then reduced poverty in East Africa. So that's, in a nutshell, what the organisation does.
A million questions I could ask there, but I'll just keep on going with the questions because I feel as if we'll maybe get that out. So what's your specific role within your company, Chris? What do you specifically do?
So yeah, basically our investors are interested in getting a return on their money, right? And the return on their money that they want is not a financial return, it's an economic and social return on their money. So they want to see the lives of people in East and Southern Africa improving as a result of our interventions, because that's the whole ethos of aid, is that, this money is given to try and, certainly in the UK's instance, reduce poverty and improves people's lives in parts of the world that are maybe not quite as fortunate as the UK in terms of wealth. So basically, what I do is I help to measure the results. I run a team which measures the results of what we're investing. So that would mean is the time to transport a container from the seaports to some of the inland cities, is it reducing? Is the cost reducing? Are people's lives improving? So it's what we call monitoring and evaluation, which is, the clue is in the name. We're monitoring what we're doing, what difference is it making, and we're also evaluating what we're doing. Is it actually working? So I run a team with 10 people in that team, and together we support the organisation with measuring the results of what we're achieving in a nutshell across these 11 countries that we operate in.
Would I be right in saying that benefits both parties. You try to improve things in Southern and Eastern Africa, but as well as improve trade to other countries as well. Chris, is that the kind of idea of it all?
That's it, exactly. So the theory is if you can help them improve trade, the rest will follow. So yes, a lot of what we're focused on is about getting those trade levels up, both in what we call intra-regionally within East Africa itself, between the different countries, but also exports to the big markets of Europe, the US, Asia as well. So yeah,
both parties can benefit.
A win-win.
Yeah, and your job is...
So exactly, both parties can benefit.
Yeah, and your job is, we're on a team which collects data on how the performance is going, and you use that data to improve things. That's what your job is in a kind of nutshell, is that right?
Exactly, in a nutshell, that's what my job is. And also we report back to our investors on what we're achieving with their money. Okay, so exactly, there's a number of aspects to it. One is learning. So what are we learning from what we're doing, from the data that we're collecting and from the evaluations that we're doing, and then translating that into better practice. So what we call adaptive management. You learn, you adapt what you're doing because conditions are constantly changing. And a big example of that is COVID. COVID-19 has been a game changer worldwide in terms of its effects on trade and movement. So we've had to learn and adapt to that. And also an accountability is the other aspect, going back to the donors and saying, here is what we've achieved with the money that you've invested in our organisation. So there's a number of aspects to it as well. It's all about learning and continuous improvement because nothing stays the same. Everything is changing all the time and you always have to adapt. We're an enormous program. We've got over 200 projects. So, it's a lot to manage. So we need to be constantly reflecting on the performance of those projects and working out whether or not we need to be doing certain things differently in certain countries. And of course, not every country is the same. Different countries are affected by different factors at different times. They all have their own set of political and economic circumstances. So again, we need to be monitoring that and making sure that that changes in that context is feeding into what we're doing on the ground.
You had mentioned that trade is obviously affected by policy. Does that mean that you're communicating with different governments in South Africa and East Africa?
Yes, so we are all our partners are government agencies. So it's like the revenue authorities, the standards authorities, the port authorities. So we are what we call partner-led. We are led by the partners. We're led by the priorities of our partners. What are the changes that they want to bring? And then we bring in technical assistance, which is experts that we employ who can help them to achieve their objectives, and also funding as well. We fund or part fund or co-fund or raise money for different projects that they are implementing. So yes, we are, one of our strengths is our good relationships with our partners. We're well regarded with all our partners, the partners which fund us, but the partners which we also work in, hand in hand with to deliver projects.
How did this career or this job come about for you, Chris? What did you need to do to land it?
So this, if I can talk about this job and how it came about, was I had been working in international development consultancy, right? So I had been working for a consultancy firm, and I was doing a lot of work for the UK government, evaluating projects all over the world where they spend money. So in Afghanistan, and a lot in Africa, in Rwanda, in Nigeria, some in Kenya, Somaliland. And so I had been doing that for a number of years. But I always thought what I would like to do is to work for an organization that was actually, not for profit, but actually on the front line and not just coming in as a consultant and evaluating it and then going away, but actually be on the front line. and helping an organisation to deliver this stuff frontline. So then I knew this company that I'm working for just now, and I had done some consultancy work for them in the past. So then I applied for the job, and then luckily enough, things went my way, and I got the job, and that was in 2017. So that was kind of mid 2017. I got that job, and then we moved down here in August 2017. Also, I would say at that point, our kids had just been born. Our kids were very young. So I was working away from home a lot when I was a consultant, and it wasn't very family friendly. So I thought if we can get somewhere where I can do the work that I do, but we can be based in the one location together, then it would work. And then luckily, as I say, fortuitously, this job landed, and that's what brought me here. But to answer your question, it was a build up to it. I had been working in this field as a consultant for quite a number of years before I landed the job.
So you had identified a kind of career path that you wanted to go down, and while you were within your current career, you knew a company, you worked alongside a company, and you basically made efforts to approach them and get involved with you guys.
Exactly. So I knew from all my life, I knew that I wanted to work and live abroad, right? It's just something I've always wanted to do, right? So I knew that was the path that I wanted to take. And then, as we'll go on to discuss, I'm sure, luckily just through like a combination of the career, how my career went, I found that this was a path that I could go down, and it would give me what I was looking for. So then I knew, and through my knowledge and through my networks, I knew of potential places I could work. Yeah.
Right. So just to get into a little bit of detail about how you actually got that. So did you contact people you knew that worked within that company and just ask some questions, what was available, or did you hear a specific role that was available?
Yeah, so the role that I'm doing just now was advertised. So it was advertised through the various job sites, and I saw it that way. So I saw it as a live vacancy. So at that point, I'd already been thinking. So again, it was just lucky that I saw it, and the timing worked, and I applied for it. But I knew of the company from my work in this sector, and as I say, I'd done some consultancy work for them several years prior, and knew them and liked them, and then thought if an opportunity comes up there in future, I would be interested in doing it.
This current career that you've got, what have you found the hardest aspects of it, and what have you done to overcome them?
So I think with this job, there's a number. One is just the complexity, right? So what I'm always trying to do in the job is to weave together, what does it all mean? Like, how's it all coming together at the top level to, what impact are we making in terms of time and cost? But given that we're a big organisation that covers 11 countries now, and at last count over 200 projects, there's a lot of complexity. Okay, so there is that is intellectually, that is really demanding, because you're thinking about, how are all these 200 projects weaving together to deliver the results that we want to achieve. So that's one thing that has been quite challenging about it.
How do you overcome
I think the other thing has been what? Sorry.
How do you overcome the scale of that? Sounds massive, 200 projects. How do you overcome the scale of what you've got to do?
So, I mean, there is no shortcut on it, mate. I'll tell you that. It's nothing but graft. You've got, and time, you need to learn. You just need to study it. You need to understand the portfolio that we're dealing with. You need to learn a lot. You need to read a lot. You need to speak to your more experienced colleagues a lot who've been in the organisation a longer time. You need to read how others have dealt with it, complexity in other organisations. So there's just been a lot of study, and I always joke and say it's like doing a PhD. You have to become a real sort of subject matter specialist in your area. And trade is difficult. Trade is actually really technical. And I wasn't in trade, not like a trade economist or something like that before I came in. So again, I knew a lot about my area, monitoring and evaluation. That was kind of my subject matter, but you then have to apply that in the area of trade. So I've had to learn that. So yeah, obviously I've got a great team, so I rely on my team as well. Some of them are experienced. So I really feel like I really feel like the first 2 years in the job was really just learning. That's what it was. And obviously you come in as a director and there's an expectation on you to sort of lead and dispense wisdom and stuff. So you have to try and balance that up. That's another thing, is that you come in, another thing that's difficult, and immediately people are expecting you to set the direction and show the future when you don't really quite understand the organization that you're dealing with. Yeah, so I'd say the first 2 years was a very steep learning curve. I'm still learning, and I think if you spoke to most people in the organization, they would say that, you know, every week they probably learn something new. I think with me, I'm still learning every day. I'm on top of it now, absolutely. I understand, I know what we need to do. I've produced a strategy and everything else, along with my colleagues. But it's that was a very, very steep learning curve when you come in to do that. Yeah, and I think that has been the toughest part of the job.
If I could try and encapsulise that there, Chris, I might be wrong. To try and encapsulise it, I would say that obviously at the beginning you had to learn a lot about it. It was new to you, try to direct the company, but it sounds as if there's that many different aspects of what you do, but you have to research them in depth, each aspect, and spend a lot of time. So you must have to research the history of the trade or whatever you're dealing with. You must have to have a vast knowledge at each individual aspect you're dealing with, which are many of them. So you maybe have to rely on your team to learn the knowledge about that. So relying on your team to learn the knowledge about different aspects, spending that amount of time as well. So putting the time and the effort into it, so that you've got a vast knowledge, as vast a knowledge as you can gain at each individual project that you've got going on there in order to operate what you're doing successfully. That sounds like a reasonable kind of...
It does, absolutely. And what I would say is to the people who are watching this, you know, it's this thing about lifelong learning. It never ever stops. As soon as you push yourself outside your comfort zone, right, and you take a big job or you take something, that's the work just beginning. You haven't made it. It's not like that's you can sit back in your comfy armchair. That's the work just beginning, because if you're going to be a success in that job, you have to invest in it. So you have to be doing the reading, you have to be doing the thing, you have to be involved in the different forums on LinkedIn or different stuff about continually updating. So really, all of these jobs at this level are tough to do successfully, I would say, and the only way you can do that is by investing. It's not 9 to 5. You've got to be committed to it, is what I would say. It never stops evolving.
By investing, you mean investing in yourself, investing your time.
Investing in yourself.
Yeah,
yes, exactly. Not money. Investing in yourself, investing in keeping your knowledge current, keeping your thinking up to date, keeping your understanding, because you'll get left behind if you don't.
Yeah. Chris, just on a personal note, a question I'd like to ask you: time management within your career, time management. What do you do to manage your time as efficiently as you can? Something I'm struggling with at work just now. I can recognise it. I see to myself that I'm not managing my time as well as what I could, and if I can get some sort of structure to this and put something together, I can do this more efficiently. And the only thing I can think about is working longer hours just now, which isn't what I'm wanting to do. But I know I need some sort of career advice on this. What about, have you got anything there?
Yeah, so I mean, mate, that is a constant struggle, right? Constant battle, right? I'd say time management, and there's lots out there on it, right? There's lots of free stuff on it as well. So you can go into things like the Harvard Business Review, which is what I look at a lot, Harvard Business Review, and they'll do free articles on time management, inbox management and stuff. So a couple of things that have worked for me, right? One is, do not start the day by getting sucked into email, right? As soon as you get sucked into email, email is a productivity killer. It'll just eat everything in its path. So try and keep emails to either at set points, right? Probably later in the day is what I would do. The other thing is a popular technique again is what they call time boxing, right? So just the same way as you would block a meeting on your calendar, you just block time out and say, work on this report, right? And then block that time out and treat it like you would a meeting. Because what they say is, there's been a lot written about this, is in order to get flow, what they call flow, when you get into deep work, you need to have at least sort of 2 hours of uninterrupted time. So you have to get really, really selfish, I would say, and block time out in your calendar that is like a meeting, the same way as you would treat a meeting. And whatever is happening, you then take yourself away and focus on that stuff within those 2 hours. So I use that a lot. So at the start of the week, I'll just go through my calendar and I'll say, right, here's a to-do list. What is it I need to do? Here's the calendar. And then I'll just block chunks of time out and try as much as I can to protect that. It's easy in theory, it's hard in practice, right? And you just have to get quite ruthless and almost just take yourself out the equation when you need to get stuff done. Just go offline, just be unresponsive, just be, and let people know that is what's happening. I used to have colleagues that had set up out of offices that when they were working on stuff, they would, an out of office, if somebody emailed them with something urgent, would go out and say, I am offline, I am working on stuff just now, don't bother me, I'll come back to you later. That's an extreme, but it is something that everybody struggles with. But it's about planning, I would say. It's about planning, it's about looking ahead, and it's about protecting your time. Because you can get caught up in the day-to-day churn. Everything's urgent. Everything needs to be done like yesterday. And email is completely abused now, right? Oh, I sent you an email on it. That means I've given you a task. No, you haven't given me a task. You just sent me an email. Don't think you're tasking me with something because you've sent me an email. So you have to kind of get a bit selfish, and it's about prioritization. That's the best thing I can say to you. You should look at your week and say, what are the absolute priorities that I need to get done this week? And just be myopic on that and get everything else pushed to the side. And then you'll start to make progress. But it's difficult.
Sounds some good sound advice. I'll try and put some of them into practice there, Chris, with some good bits. You'd mentioned you worked for the government, UK government, I believe, in Africa. Is that right? What was that, Chris? How did it come about?
So I wasn't a government employee, right? I was a contractor for the government. So the UK government predominantly would put out contracts that they needed to be delivered, mainly monitoring and evaluation work, which is the area that I work in. And then what would happen is I worked for a firm, two firms at that point, which were consultancy firms. So the way that we operated was we would bid for and try and win these contracts to deliver services on behalf of the UK government in Africa, mainly to evaluate what was being achieved on some of these projects. So that was what really gave me my break into international development. First of all, I started off with a small Scottish-based company called Upper Quartile, which was that was really what gave me my break into international development. And then that company was then sold to a bigger company called WIG International. And then I worked for them, heading up one of their units as well, and just continued the work that I was doing. So I think it's important to say what happened was the skills that I had developed in what we call monitoring and evaluation. That's the area that I work in, same way as you work in construction or somebody else works in, I don't know, medicine or law, right? So that was the technical area. It's just I took those skills and I've applied them in an international context now. So really what I did first of all was build up the CV, build up the skills, build up the experience, and being able to deliver mainly evaluation projects and then use that to kind of transition into the international field, which, as I say, which is what I always wanted to do.
Is that MEL, Chris? MEL, is that abbreviated?
MEL.
Yeah.
MEL.
What you do?
That stands for Monitoring, Evaluation and Learning.
Right, okay. Previously to that, you were a recruitment consultant, is that correct?
That's right. So that's what I did. That was like my first job, my first full-time job.
Right, okay. And how did recruitment consultant lead into this current career?
Right. So that's it didn't. That's an interesting question, really. So it didn't. I had to kind of make a career change, I would say, and the sort of the genesis of that, let's say, was I left university and I didn't really have a clue what I wanted to do. I had been offered to do a PhD, and I was. But I knew I didn't want to do it, right? I just knew that it was just, I was doing it because it was convenient there. It was a PhD in what they call gerontology, which is the study of old people, which I was like, you know, I just don't think it's me, right? Let's say it that way. Although I was delighted to have had the offer.
A geriatric specialist. Excellent.
So I was like, I don't think that's me, right? So then I knew I wanted to make money because I was sick of being skint, right? Because I had been at university for 4 years. And so a mate of mine got a job in recruitment and he was the manager. And he offered me a job in recruitment. So when I went into recruitment, my primary goal was to save enough money to be able to go traveling for a year, right? And basically, because you can make quite a lot of money in recruitment because it's sales based and there's targets. So I went into that, and then I did that for 3 years in 2 companies, made a bit of money, saved it, and then I took what you would call a gap year between November 2002 and November 2003, and then I went around the world for a year. And we went through Southeast Asia, Australia, New Zealand. We basically did a trip of the whole world and came back and took 1 year to do that, working our way around. Now, when I was on that trip, right, I had a kind of epiphany. And I was thinking, because I was thinking, what am I going to do next? I don't want to go back into recruitment, right? It's not what I want to do necessarily. I want to do something different because, as I say, I just kind of fell into that. And when we were in Fiji, I remember this, people were getting water delivered to their houses because there wasn't any running water. They were all out. And I remember that seeing the water truck and big queues of people with basins and buckets and everything getting water. And I was like, that's it. It's economic development. That's what I want to work in. That is what I've been looking for. And then, honestly, that's the time I remember having that. I said, you know, I'm interested in it. It does good. I can see the career in it. So when I then came back from traveling in late 2003, I went back into recruitment for a few months. My previous employer were good enough to give me some work, which I'm grateful for them. And then I started my transition over into economic development. And I started off by getting a job with the WISE group. You know them? The WISE group. Yeah, right, who are kind of an employability and skills training. And where the hook was there was my recruitment skills, because I was actually finding then jobs for people who'd been long-term unemployed. So the recruitment skills that I had allowed me to kind of make that transition into what you would call economic development or economic and social inclusion. And then that then what was the beginning of it. That was it. And then from the WISE group, I then got a job in economic development consultancy in the UK, and that was the start of my career. So that was 2004 into 2005, and that's when this career that I'm in just now really started.
So you've identified it and you've made leaps towards it and you've made efforts towards getting it. If I could ask you, see, recruitment consultancy, Chris, if you could just explain a wee bit about what recruitment consultancy is. I know the clue's kind of in the title, but If you could explain it a wee bit and maybe explain to me what the biggest learning aspects you took for your time in recruitment consultancy.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So basically what that is right, all companies need to hire, right? All companies need to hire people. And hiring people is a hassle, and it can take a lot of time of senior managers. That it can take, to manage the whole process, place the advert, get all the applicants in, sift the applicants, form a short list, do all of that. So what recruitment consultants do is that they provide that service for a fee to the hiring employer. Okay, and then what you do then is you then help them with that recruitment process by finding them the right people for their organization. And that requires, so you first of all, you work to find the employers who want your service. So that's the sales aspect of it. And then when you get the service, when you get the commission with that company, you are then working on their behalf, either from your database of people that you've got, or by placing an advert and then managing the flow of applicants that come in, and then interviewing them, and then shortlisting them, and then presenting the shortlist to the employer, who then you work with to help find the right person. So it's a fascinating area, and I've still got a lot of good friends in recruitment who are doing very well in it, let's say, up until COVID-19. And there's all different aspects to it. I was working in accountancy recruitment, right? So I was dealing with kind of part qualified and early stage accountants, for which there's quite a big market, and other accountancy roles like accounts payable people, accounts receivable people. Now, what did I learn in it, Adam? Loads. It was a brilliant introduction to business life, because you've got to learn to deal with people. First and foremost, it's a people game. You're dealing with people on the client side, and you're dealing with people on the candidate side. So you have to learn to really improve your communication skills. I learned how to sell in that job as well, because you've got to sell. There's lots of recruitment consultancies out there. Why should they go with you over somebody else? What's the differentiator? So again, you've got to then be able to sell. Also learned how to compete, because it's quite a competitive industry, because there's a lot of, it's sales based, because every time you place somebody, you get a fee, and that's how you generate revenue from that. So I learned a lot about that, and you just learn how to be professional, and that's what I would say. And I think that's a key skill: the way that you present yourself, the way that you deal with people, the kind of softer skills that you really need for a career in the professional services, let's say. I learned a lot of that in those 3 or 4 years in that job. Yeah.
You'd mentioned you went travelling around the world, Chris. I remember going into your office in Glasgow just before you left there, and there was a leaderboard on a whiteboard in your office, and at the top of it was your name. That was how much quarter of a year you'd made for your company, and you were at the top, and I think it was £64,000 you'd made for your company in a quarter of a year. And I always remember I've been dead impressed by that. I take it you were aiming at getting yourself around the world and going doing a bit of travelling. Chris, you had mentioned to me on the phone in our previous conversation that you started a company with a partner. Could you tell me a bit about that?
Yes, so that was that company. I should say that company had already been started. Okay, so but it was very early stage. So that was upper quartile, and as I say, I was looking to get into international development. So the same way a lot of these opportunities happen, it has to happen through networking. It has to happen. I was like, I want to get into international development, but I don't know how to do it. Now, friends of mine had then said, you should speak to this guy who's got a business that does that. Okay. And I then met this individual a few times over in Edinburgh for dinner, and we were talking about how I could kind of transition into that. Now, I remember those conversations very well. And he was saying there's plenty of work available, but you have to go to places like Afghanistan. Now, that was back in sort of 2010. And, the news coming out of there, well, it's never very good, but it wasn't particularly good at that point. And I remember speaking to who is now my wife at that point, and saying, you know, if it's going to, who is now my wife, but was my girlfriend at that point, saying, if it's going to start, it's going to have to start here, because this is where the work is, and I don't really have the experience. I'm going to have to go to somewhere like Afghanistan. So I think that's a big thing to say. I wanted it so badly that I was prepared to do almost anything, right? Including going to a place that I'd only ever heard about on the news, and I had a stream of bad news, and I was terrified about it, but I kind of bit the bullet and decided to go and do it. And that's when I started with this company in early 2011, doing contracting work out to Afghanistan, as I say, on behalf of the UK government. So that was it. That, I think that's a big lesson. Was I was thinking, oh, I'm going to go and get international development assignments in the Bahamas or in the South Pacific or something like that, and I'll be sipping pina colada on the beach. Absolutely not. That's not how it starts. It starts by you having to do whatever it takes, you know, within the confines of the law, to get that career started. So then I started then working for that business, and then working for them on different contracts, helping them to win contracts, delivering work. And then I got the opportunity to become an equity partner, that is, buy into that business and actually own a stake of it. And then I took that opportunity to do that. And then I was then an equity partner in that business. So one of three guys who were running that business. And I was the youngest partner in that business, me and the two other guys who had started it. So I didn't start it, but I was there helping with its growth. And then, as I say, I became then one of the equity partners in that business, which means I owned some of that business.
Right, great. I'd looked at your LinkedIn profile, Chris, leads on to the next question. It mentioned in your LinkedIn profile that you felt as if you led in the growth of two companies. Could you tell us what it was that made you feel that you led in the growth of these companies, what you did?
Yeah, so on the first company, right, we were a small company, okay? So we were trying to get a foothold in quite a competitive market. So I was heavily involved in business development. So that is, you know, getting us on, winning us contracts, trying to get involved with new clients, all that sort of stuff. And that was and growing that business to a point whereby we could then sell that business to somebody bigger. So as I say, we were successful in being able to do that. That was in 2013 we did that. And then I went into a new business and then became automatically a sort of divisional director in that business, in the monitoring, evaluation and learning space. And then they didn't have much in the way of a business unit in that area. So me, along with the others in that team, we then grew that monitoring, evaluation and learning practice within that new company, because they didn't really have any contracts. So we then helped to secure a lot of new work, and we grew that business from, I think, a team of 2 when we went into a team of 10 by the time I left. We recruited people and we grew it, and we grew the portfolio. And by, you know, the time I was moving on, we had work all over, all over the world, in Asia, in Africa, lots of different contracts. So both of those roles, I was in a leadership role, let's say, trying to grow those businesses, particularly in the second one, whereby we were growing it pretty much from scratch. Because, as I say, there was a business unit that didn't really exist, and we were helping to grow that from zero.
If I could take you back, Chris, to your education, how did you do at school? Did you enjoy school? And if so, why? Yeah,
so, I mean, school was, you'll know, Adam. I was definitely walking the line at school, put it that way, right? And I did enough to be able to get myself to university, right? but I probably could have done better. And the reason being was, the environment that we grew up in, as you know, Adam. So it was I enjoyed school. Right? I definitely did, but I was distracted because at that point, when it got to the critical years, I wasn't really that interested in studying. I was more interested in going out and bouncing about the streets with my mates. Some of us had just passed our tests, spinning about the Garnet Valley and other stuff like that. Going out at the weekends, getting up to hijinks. You know the script.
Yeah.
So luckily, I managed to do enough, right, to get myself to university. If I'd have studied harder, I could have perhaps got to a better university, but I didn't. So I'd say that point at school, I kind of had a bit of a stuttery start. I would say I did enough, and then things started to come together later on. But school, I was just lucky that I was clever, I would say, but not particularly hardworking at that point, which is a slight regret.
University, Chris, what did you study at university, and what did you learn in the aspect of going to uni? What did you learn for there, and what did you learn personally from university as well?
Right, yeah, good questions. So first of all, I went to do chemical engineering at what was then the University of Paisley. But again, coming back to the point that I'm making, that I didn't really have much of a plan. When I got there and I was doing it, I just found it boring as sin. I just was not interested. And when I actually examined my reasons why I was there, it was for the wrong reasons, because I just knew that was a good career, but I wasn't particularly interested in it, because I was quite good at science, physics and chemistry and all of that, right? And it went down a bit. And when I was there, what I realised is what I was more interested in was the social sciences, people and how the world works. And that's what I was interested in. So I then tried to change. That was 1993. Can you believe it, man? I feel ancient. And that was 1993. And I then tried to change to the social studies course. And they said, you can't come because it's oversubscribed. What you're going to have to do is go and do an HNC first and then come back. So then I had to go to Reed Care College and do an HNC in social sciences. And then I used that then to get into the degree course at Paisley at that point. And then I was off and running because I loved that. So I did a psychology degree there, applied social studies, but with kind of specialism in behavioural science or psychology. And I loved it because that's what I was passionate about. And it wasn't a chore to study. It was actually, I loved learning about it. So what did I learn when I was at university? It's less about the content, Adam, and it's more about, I think it gives you a bit of belief in yourself and saying when you're there and you're getting good marks and you're performing well, you kind of say, I can do this. I know I can do this. And you're getting that positive reinforcement from being there. Obviously, what you also get is you meet a different group of people. You broaden your network and you meet people who, most of whom I'm still in contact with to this day, that, broaden your network out of the place that you've came from. So I learned about that, and I think confidence that, I can do this. I'm here, I'm holding my own, I'm getting good marks, and it opens up a world of possibility to you. So then you can see beyond university and you can start to see, okay, I could do this, I could do that, I could do this, I could do that. And the world opens up. It goes from quite a narrow place to a very broad place. And that's what I think the great value of universities are, not only from the people you meet, the people who teach you, who can put you into opportunities, but also, the horizon which opens up in front of you after those 4 years.
Maybe quite a deep question next, Chris, but it's probably one that's kind of in the forefront of my mind. Coming from the same area, knowing you when I was young and knowing what you were like when you were young, you were always dead driven and you're always in the pursuit of knowledge, and you were always looked as if you were aiming towards university from a young age. You could see that you were aiming towards something. Maybe you didn't know what it was at the time, but you could see that you knew that you were wanting a strong career and you were going to be going places. And we were surrounded by that didn't surround us, Chris. The people we were surrounded by weren't they career driven, thinking about that in the slightest. We were weekend driven. And that was pure and simple, just living for the weekends, and there was nothing else existed. Do you have any idea why you're like that? Or why you were career driven from a young age? Why you had the pursuit of that?
Another good question. I think a mix of things, right? And I think one, right, so you know, I was lucky enough to be recognized as being clever, right? And I think it all probably starts from that, right? Which is whether I am or whether I'm not, that's a matter of debate, right? Who knows? But I remember, so my mother and father always saying to me, "You're clever," right? And me going, "Right, I'm clever. And then at school getting positive reinforcement because you're classed as being clever at school, right? So then you're then thinking, well, perhaps I could do something good, right? I could, right? But I'd say it is important that you need that positive reinforcement early in your life from the people who are charged with bringing you up. And that doesn't even need to be your parents, but good teachers or whatever. And that's why I think good schools are important, because kids need to believe that they are capable of something, right? If you don't believe you're capable, then you're never going to try. So there was that aspect, right? I think it's other people, right? As much as it's yourself, it's other people giving you that start in life. The second thing is just interest levels, right? About always being interested about what else is out there in the world. And that's something that you can do on your own. You don't need other people to tell you you're clever. You can start, and especially now with the advent of YouTube and social media and all this information, people can look beyond where they are and see what the possibilities are of a life that they would want to have, and then aim at that. And then, you know, so that's sort of, you need a vision. You need a vision of where you want to go. And I always had that. And I always felt that even though I had a brilliant childhood and a brilliant teenage years growing up and wouldn't change it for the world, I knew that my ambition was, my destiny was to be somewhere else, was to kind of get on with it and try and not because there was anything wrong with where we grew up, but just that there was a whole world out there that I wanted to see, you know, and I knew that I had an opportunity to do that, so I would do it. So I think there's you need that vision, and then you need to try and keep it. As I say, from a young age, I knew I wanted to work and live abroad because I was curious. I wanted to see different parts of the world. I wanted to go. And look, Adam, it took me 41 years to achieve it. Right? It wasn't like an overnight success. When I was 41, I left the UK to come here. That's the first time I'd been living overseas properly. Okay, I'd been traveling in and out, but I was still based in the UK. So it can take a long time, but you need the vision and you need to keep driving towards that. And look, it's not going to be plain sailing. I had lots of bumps along the way. As I said, my schooling, borderline, could have went either way, but managed to get to university. Why? Because my parents expected me to go to university, right? And I knew I would disappoint them if, wait there, I'm going to log back in here, keep getting kicked out. I knew I would disappoint them if I didn't do that, right? But at the same time, if I didn't go to university, I'm sure they would have been, right, fine, go and do what you want. So there was many factors to it. There was many factors to it. But I think, as I say, the key one is always knowing that there was a possibility of great things if you just kept them in vision, if you just kept them in your mind and kept pushing towards them.
Really interesting, Chris. Really interesting. The first part you had mentioned was that your parents had instilled that into you. They were the positive reinforcement. You're clever. I think that's really important. it's interesting you've recognised that as well as something that's maybe been an initial step towards you thinking, right, maybe I am quite clever, maybe I can pursue this, and that's led you from a young age to there. I feel as if maybe, I feel, not maybe, I've been overcoming that all my life. See people telling you, don't do this, you'll kill yourself, don't drive, don't go on a motorbike, don't try and do this, you're not capable. And I love breaking that every time. It can be really difficult if you've received negative reinforcement all your life to try and then take the leaps, because your mind's filled with that negative thoughts. But if you could instill that into kids from a young age, you're capable, you can do this, you're clever, if that's the reinforcement they're getting all the time, that's the thought patterns that start producing through their mind. And I think that's really interesting that you've recognised that as well. Just on the final notes.
So I was just going to say, I was just going to say on that, right, and it's a key point because I've been talking to my wife about this a lot recently, right? It's about identity, right? A lot of this stuff in life is about what people believe their identity is, right? If you believe your identity is a Ned in the west of Scotland, then that's what you'll be, right? And there's more and more getting written on this subject, and it's about forging that identity in children young. So you want your children, our children, to grow up believing that they are capable of anything. And if parents are continually putting them down or putting barriers, no matter what that parent has achieved, if you want the best for your child, you must take these barriers away and give them an identity whereby they believe anything is possible. Right now, I'm not saying that's what I had, right? And I'm not saying that at all. But what I'm saying is I somehow believed that anything was possible and that I could do it. Now, where did that come from? I don't know. But mainly probably my parents and the environment I was in. That's what it was. It's no innate brilliance in me, I would say. So I think it's about identity, right? And going back to the reason why, you're kind of doing this podcast. People need to forge that identity of who they are. And as you say, if it's continually negative reinforcement, then that identity is not something which is set up for success. Big thing that we need to get over. And that's a lot of modern teaching methods now. I think the quality of teaching now that you have in Scotland and the UK is light years ahead what we had at school, much, much more enlightened, much more pupil-centred, I think, from what I know of my friends who are teachers. And I think there is a lot more of that now than maybe what we had growing up. So I'm cautiously optimistic that we're maybe starting to overcome this identity issue.
I think we are, Chris. I think we are. That's a little bit part of the basis of this podcast. It's how culturally we interact and what are we teaching our kids? What are we teaching ourselves culturally? What do we think of ourselves and what are we aspiring to be? I think Scotland can do a lot better culturally. And probably lots of different countries, what we think of ourselves and what we're teaching ourselves and what our aspirations is. There was a guy I listened to called Gary Vaynerchuk, who's been a massive inspiration for myself. And one thing he had mentioned, I don't know if you've heard of the guy, right, but he owns different companies in America, billionaire, aiming towards owning one of the American football companies. He's like a motivational speaker. He's really good. But what he said happened to him was that his mum used to explode into like loving gratification every time when he was young. He done something which was even the smallest bit good. So see if he held the door open for a woman, or if he just the simple things. Anytime he done anything good, his mum would just explode into like picking him up. And I think he thinks that searching for that gratification all these years, that's what made him a driven individual, because he was always in the pursuit of doing something good for somebody else and trying to better himself and trying to get that gratification that his mother gave him. And she identified points where it was, like good things he'd done where she exploded, and that's what kind of driven him all his life. He'd mentioned that, which I think, and you can spin that around the other way. If you spin that around the other way and you're constantly pushing negative aspects, then it's that other spiral that takes place. Instead of an upwards trajectory, it's a downwards trajectory. It's that thing. I think that's quite important. It's interesting you've picked up. Chris, there's two questions I want to ask you before the last two final questions. First one is Afghanistan. What did you do there? What did you learn from that? And the second one was, you mentioned in 1993 you went to Afghanistan. And I remember not long after that time, you took me and Ryan to see the Spice Girls movie. Why did you do that?
The Spice Girls movie.
Do you remember that? We must have been about 12 and you took us.
I do. I don't know why I done that. So look, Afghanistan, right? Spice Girls movie. I've got no idea. I'm going to plead temporary insanity on that.
Was it maybe were you trying to impress a new girlfriend or something like that?
It could have been, man. Well, even the Spice Girls sound like it's a different century, man. Total different century. Unbelievable stuff.
25 years.
The world has changed so much since then. So anyway, right, Afghanistan, right, what I would say is that's one of my great formative experiences in my life, because I really pushed myself outside my comfort zone there, right? As I say, you know, you'd only ever heard bad news about the country, and you go there and you know, you're that first trip there, I remember I did a month first of all, and I was absolutely terrified for most of it. But then I came back and I was like, got a few weeks out and came home and stuff, and then I was ready to go back there. So what would I say I've learned about that, right? As I would say, and what I've learned in my whole international development career, people there are just exactly the same as you or I or anybody else. They're trying to raise their families. They're getting on with their work. It's just life has dealt them a bad hand, you know, through war, corruption, poor governments, poor leadership, stuff that they don't have any control over. And they're having to do the best that they can in those circumstances. I made a lot of good friends out there. I learned a lot about the culture. But I also learned that we are very fortunate in a place like the UK. People complain about the NHS, complain about potholes, complain about this, that, and the next thing. They've got no idea. You know what I mean? They can go to their bed at night and they can sleep. Law and order rules. You get justice. You get healthcare for free. You get your kids educated for nothing. You've got opportunities. You've got safety. And people have a lot to be thankful for in the UK and other developed nations in Europe and North America and Australia that people in these countries can only dream about because of a set of circumstances that have led to their lives being the way that they are. So it develops a great sense of gratitude in you and for what you have, but also a desire to try and make the lives of these people that you're there to serve better in whatever small way you can. You know, I mean, I'm one person, but so there I was trying to teach people the skills that I had, help them think about things, do things differently. So that's what I would say is big takeaway is, you know, we are the same. We're the same the world over. We're absolutely the same. We have the same hopes, the same fears, the same challenges. It's just some of us get to live in a better environment than others through, when you look at it, essentially nothing but chance, just where you're born.
Chris, do you feel as if it's quite important for you to have a career where you're making a difference?
Well, for me, definitely, yes. For me, this is the career that I've chosen. You know, for me, I like the fact that I'm contributing to doing good. Yeah, I like that fact. I mean, it has to interest me as well. But a long time ago, I made that decision that that is what they call I think it's the for purpose sector now. For purpose. Now, look, we're all for purpose because at the end of the day, we're all providing services to each other, which eventually are going to improve lives, you know, whether it's building student accommodation or it's working for a bank or whatever. At the end of the day, these are all going to make an impact on people's lives. So, yeah, for me, as I say, I've been fortunate enough to be able to work in this for purpose sector. And I want my work to actually contribute to doing good in the world. Yeah, and it's in the small way that it can. You know, I'm not like out there sort of changing, you know, whole countries on my own, but I'm part of an effort. I'm a cog in that machine that's trying to do that.
Do you get more satisfaction from that type of career than what you did recruitment consultancy? Would that be right?
Yes, I do, and that's one of the reasons why I changed, because I wanted to kind of move into this career. Don't get me wrong, I did get satisfaction out of that. I loved the time that I was in it. I made a lot of good friends that I'm still in contact with. I learned a huge amount, but I was young and I hadn't really worked out what I wanted to do, and it was kind of in that job that I had, as I say, the epiphany of what I wanted to do, because I was thinking, I've got the rest of my career to work. What am I going to do? So yeah, that was it.
Final couple of questions before we wrap it up. That was I really enjoyed that, Chris. Enjoyed listening to all that. It was brilliant. Best advice for anybody? I'm going to split it up. Best advice for anybody moving into recruitment consultancy or thinking about that, or best advice for anybody in your current career or thinking about moving into your current career?
So look, let me just give some general advice to young people, right? Is that however boring school is, you need to stick in, right? Now, you don't need to be academic. You don't need to be the best, right? If you're interested in woodwork or whatever, but a lot of young people, right, they school just comes at the wrong time. The hormones are kicking in. You're transitioning into adulthood, and the last thing and everything's exciting and exhilarating, and the last thing they want to do is sit and study books, and that is an issue, is the timing of when it comes in life, because I know that last thing on your mind is sitting doing books when you can be out with your mates running about, having fun and getting up to adventures. But you do need to stick in, because really you need that as a foundation to go forward, right? You absolutely do. And as I say, if it's then going on to technical college, take a joiner or whatever it is that you want to do, or a bricklayer, as you were, Adam, or whatever, you need some sort of foundation before you can transition into other things. What I would say is, if you want to go into recruitment consultancy, right, then again, they tend to look for people with university degrees, because that's a kind of badge. Not all the time, but increasingly so, I would say, because they would want to then know that people have a certain level of polish about them, and that they've achieved a certain level of education, so that they can talk to sort of clients and represent the company in a professional manner. So I'd say for any of those careers, you need a university degree, okay? It doesn't need to be, because what is university to employers? A lot of the time, it's just a badge that you can think and reason at a high level. It doesn't even matter what you've done. It's just a level that you've reached. You've proven that you can study at that level and you can achieve a qualification at that level. So for them, it's an insurance policy to say, I know if I hire this person, they have taken the time to educate themselves and they will be a certain type of person. So I would say increasingly a university degree is essential for any professional services career that you want to do. If you want to go into international development stuff, as I say, there's a number of routes in. One is to try and go down the consultancy route, which I did, and then get a job as a graduate consultant with one of these consultancies once you finish university, or an NGO, as they call them, a non-governmental organisation, or do some volunteering work for VSO, voluntary service overseas, but try and get into somewhere that's going to give you exposure to the international development world, either through a consultancy, which will often hire kind of entry-level people, or through volunteering, or for working for a charity or a not-for-profit with an international aspect to it. And then once you're in that field, then you just then need to be live to the opportunities and pick an area that you want to specialize in, and start building up skills and expertise in that area gradually. And then you then become more of what they call a subject matter expert. And that's how you can progress your career in doing that. So yeah, I think it starts with education. It all starts with education. That is the truth. For people from working class backgrounds like us, Adam, that is the ticket out, right? That is the ticket up, because we don't have all the sort of old boys clubs or middle class networks that others may have. from different areas. We need to prove ourselves through the education system. And then from that, you then build up your own network and move forward. The other thing I would say just on this is you need to keep your activity high. Like reading some stuff recently saying, oh, there is an element of luck, but those who have higher levels of activity tend to be luckier. Why? Because they're putting out more feelers, they're putting out more tentacles, they're setting up more conversations, they're putting more irons in the fire. And one of those irons is going to lead to something. But if you're never putting irons in the fire, you've never got an opportunity. So you need to be putting in, you need to keep your activity high, you need to be networking, you need to be sniffing out opportunities and taking a lot of knockbacks. You get those knockbacks, you'll get many more knockbacks than you will get successful, but one of them will lead to something.
Was a great analysis, Chris. That was a brilliant bit of information there. That's us, Chris. Thanks very much for coming on the Do It Now podcast. Really enjoyed that and really appreciated you coming on, Chris, taking a wee bit of your own time out to come on and do this, mate. Brilliant. Thanks very much again, mate.
Okay, Adam, thanks. Hopefully that was useful and it wasn't too rambly.
I really enjoyed it myself, Chris. I enjoyed hearing the story. It's probably 100 more questions I could ask.